Hey everyone, let's talk about the title of this video. Having the gift. Born psychic versus trained psychic. Now, the reason why I titled this video this way is because it is a superly searched term. A lot of people online are searching this and they're curious, what's the difference between somebody who's born psychic versus trained psychic? So if that's you, stick around, I'm going to answer that question. So if you are new here, my name is Lauren. I am a psychic development coach, and I am here on my channel to teach you guys how to strengthen your psychic abilities. And one of the things that I love doing here on my channel is dispelling myths around the psychic ability. So let's first start with what is the psychic ability, or what is the intuitive ability? Both are the same. I think those words psychic and intuitive are basically, they can be interchanged. So when I say psychic or intuitive, I'm talking about the same thing. The psychic ability is the ability, the skill to sense information from another source, using your psychic abilities, the six clairs. That's a whole nother video. But basically you're using these abilities to get psychic information. Psychic hits is what we sometimes call them. Now, many people use the word psychic gifts, and I don't think that there's anything innately wrong with this, but I do want to talk about what the word gift implies. And so when people say I have the psychic gift or she has the psychic gift, what they're basically saying is that you are gifted. You had something else bestow upon you a gift. You know, when we think about gifts, it's usually that somebody else gave you something and you received it. It's usually, it kind of has this connotation of you wouldn't have given it to yourself, it was bestowed upon you. And so when psychics claim to have a gift, although they might not be meaning to, in a way they're saying, I have something special that you don't have. And I think inherently that starts to create some biases or some opinions about psychics in general. And that is that certain psychics have abilities and the rest of us don't. The rest of us don't have access to this ability, and it's just a gift, and shoot, you got the luck of the draw, you're not psychic, sorry. I mean, yes, absolutely, the psychic ability is a gift, especially when we think about how amazing it is and all the things it can help us with, absolutely. But I like to use the word ability or skill instead, because that's exactly what it is. And so one of the ways that my coach taught me, and I absolutely love when she quoted this, but she basically used the analogy of the psychic ability being like a muscle. And it's a muscle, everyone's got muscles, and if you go to the gym and work out that muscle and strengthen it, that muscle is going to get stronger. Now, if you stop working out, if you stop going to the gym, that muscle is going to get weaker. And that's just how the psychic ability is. Anybody can go strengthen this muscle, and also they can forget about it. They cannot strengthen that muscle and have it be weak. And so I think the majority of people probably have a weaker psychic muscle because they simply just haven't practiced it. Now, the people that are psychics out there have probably practiced a lot, and so they have a stronger ability, they have a stronger muscle, and because that muscle is stronger, it's more reliable and it's more accurate. And so now you're probably thinking, okay, Lauren, but what about those like kids that pop out and they're just like super psychic and they say something and they're like, they've had a past life, or they say this crazy thing and they're talking to grandpa across the room who's dead? Or what about those psychics that are just so amazingly spot on or talented, or just like way better than like your average psychic? Absolutely, people can be born being more psychic to start off with, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that somebody else over here does not have access to grow this ability. And so when I think about the psychic ability, I really see it as a spectrum. And I feel like the majority of people are probably on one end of the spectrum where they just aren't practiced, they haven't been using that intuition, they haven't been understanding their gut feelings, maybe those hits don't come as reliably, maybe they're often incorrect, or they confuse them with their own mind and their own thoughts. But then the more you practice, the more you kind of progress along the spectrum. And then again, if you stop practicing as much, you're probably going to kind of fall back. It's like when you learn to ride a bike and then you haven't touched it in a while, and then you need to kind of relearn how to do it. So just because your neighbor Joe starts with his psychic ability and he grows it really far, really fast, and then he maybe stops doing it later in life, doesn't mean that somebody couldn't come along and surpass him that maybe originally had less psychic ability than him. I hope that makes sense. So I think essentially what I'm trying to say here is just because you're born at this level doesn't mean you can't move one way or the other. And that doesn't mean that somebody who was born at a different level can't surpass you or maybe not surpass you. So there's really no competition here. Everyone has access to this ability. And I think this also causes harm to the people that feel like they were born with some sort of gift. Because what happens when their gift starts waning or when it's just not working as well? Then they start to feel like there's something wrong with them because they were supposed to be this born psychic. It was supposed to come like that. They didn't know they had to practice, they didn't know they had to put in work and effort and time towards it. They just got it originally so easily. And then think about the people who are learning, who are practicing, and they feel like they can't ever reach a certain level and they sort of block themselves because they're comparing themselves to natural born gifted psychics. So it can become a block for these people to overcome that they just kind of unknowingly placed because of what some other psychic said. Now, am I going to fight somebody in the street for saying the word psychic gift instead of psychic ability? No, absolutely not. But I have people argue with me online about this with fiery passion, and I'm sure it's just an online thing. But I, again, want us to think less about trying to be perfect all the time and more just about, hey, what does this subtly put out about us as an industry when we say these words in these terms? So you can probably see where I'm sort of getting with this video. Born psychic is one thing. I technically think we're all born psychic. It's just to a different level. But let's talk about trained psychics next. I don't really see much of a difference between a trained psychic and a born psychic. Yes, one might be further along that spectrum than somebody else. Trained psychics can be just as accurate and just as good as any other psychic because they practice. The more you practice, the more psychic you become, the more accurate that information becomes, and the more quickly you're able to call on psychic hits. Now there's some wiggle room here because I do believe even if you've been out of practice for a while, you can jump back into it pretty quickly. I just kind of want to say that the overall experience, like the amount of years you've been doing it and where you started when you did start, doesn't necessarily say a whole lot about where you are now. Because what I would look at instead is how much you've been practicing recently, how many readings you've been doing. There could be somebody who's been practicing for 30 years who only does one reading a year versus somebody who's only practiced for the last 4 years, but they do 5 readings a week. That's a lot different. If you still don't believe me, I give you me. I am a trained psychic. I would say that I didn't have psychic experiences growing up. I didn't have any, I didn't talk to spirits, I didn't have any of that. It wasn't until I lost my dog and went and saw a animal communicator that I was like, whoa, I can do this. I went out and learned how to do it. I took classes, I practiced, and ever since I took those classes, I've been giving readings consistently ever since. And the more that people find me online, obviously, the more practice I get because my readings, I have more and more readings. But at the same time, I did have this gift all along. I did have little psychic experiences here and there, but it just wasn't indulged, it wasn't encouraged. And so, yeah, if you were comparing me back then to somebody else who was naturally more gifted, yeah, I probably did not look like a psychic. And so my hope here is that it encourages all of you to understand that you don't have to start 10 years ago. You can start now. You don't have to compare yourself to other psychics. It's all about practice in your individual journey. You don't have to be gifted. You have the ability to strengthen your abilities, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. So, are you psychic? Yes. Are you a good psychic? You can be. I would ask, when was the last time that you practiced? You can call yourself psychic, you can call yourself an intuitive, you can learn and you can practice using the techniques and the exercises here on my channel. I have courses, I have free videos, and I am here to give you a resource to get started. I felt like I got really lucky with finding the program that I found, and I want all of you to feel like you have a resource in me to be able to strengthen your abilities. And if you're new here and you're just starting your journey, it's important to understand how to protect yourself, how to connect correctly, and all of that good stuff. So I have a playlist called Start Here, which is like the basic foundations of what you need to know. So start there, check out that playlist. Feel free to ask me any questions and I can point you in the right direction. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this dispelled some myths and empowered you to feel like you can strengthen your psychic abilities too. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye.